Franklin Pierce, born on November 23, 1804, in Hillsborough, New Hampshire, was the 14th President of the United States, serving from 1853 to 1857. His presidency, often regarded as one of the least effective in American history, occurred during a deeply divided period in the nation's history, marked by tensions over slavery, territorial expansion, and the nation's sectional divisions. Pierce was born into a prominent New Hampshire family. His father, Benjamin Pierce, was a Revolutionary War veteran and a former governor of New Hampshire. Raised in a politically active household, Pierce was encouraged to pursue a career in law and public service. He attended Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, where he befriended future President Nathaniel Hawthorne, a novelist. Pierce graduated in 1824 and studied law, gaining admission to the bar in 1827. Pierce began his political career in 1829 when he was elected to the New Hampshire legislature. His early political views aligned with the Democratic Party, which he joined, and he was a staunch advocate for Jacksonian principles. Pierce later served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1833 to 1837, where he established a reputation as an able, if somewhat inconspicuous, legislator. After his time in the House, Pierce returned to New Hampshire and held various state positions, including as a member of the New Hampshire Senate and the state's Democratic Party leader. In 1842, Pierce was elected to the U.S. Senate, where he became a vocal supporter of President James K. Polk's policies, particularly on the expansion of slavery into new territories. However, Pierce's political career in the Senate was short-lived. He resigned in 1842 due to personal dissatisfaction with the position and returned to New Hampshire to focus on his law practice. Although Pierce's political career was primarily defined by civilian service, his time in the military was pivotal during the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. Pierce served as a brigadier general despite having no prior military experience. He participated in several key battles, including the Battle of Contreras and the Battle of Churubusco. Though his service was marred by a significant injury, which left him with lifelong health problems, Pierce's military experiences helped bolster his public profile. Pierce's political fortunes turned in the early 1850s when the Democratic Party, in search of a unifying candidate amidst the growing tensions over slavery, turned to him as a compromise choice for the 1852 presidential election. His reputation as a moderate who could bridge the divide between Northern and Southern factions made him an appealing candidate. In the 1852 Democratic National Convention, Pierce emerged as the nominee after a deadlock between other potential candidates. His relative political obscurity worked in his favor, as delegates were looking for someone who had not been deeply involved in the contentious slavery debates. Running against the Whig candidate, General Winfield Scott, Pierce won a decisive victory, securing 254 electoral votes to Scott's 42. His inauguration took place on March 4, 1853. Pierce's presidency, although marked by relative peace in terms of foreign relations and domestic policy, was overshadowed by the intensifying sectional conflict between North and South, particularly over slavery. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, Pierce's most controversial act as president, was his support for the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, a piece of legislation introduced by Senator Stephen A. Douglas. The law allowed for the possibility of slavery in the territories of Kansas and Nebraska, where it had previously been banned under the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Pierce, believing that popular sovereignty, the idea that settlers of a territory should decide the issue of slavery, was the best solution to the conflict, endorsed the act. However, this decision led to violent confrontations in Kansas known as Bleeding Kansas, as pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces clashed. The Kansas-Nebraska Act deeply divided the nation, inflaming Northern opposition and leading to the rise of the Republican Party, which was founded in opposition to the expansion of slavery. Pierce's failure to effectively manage the growing crisis further alienated him from the Northern electorate. Foreign affairs. Pierce's foreign policy was marked by his efforts to expand American influence abroad, particularly in the Caribbean and Central America. He was an advocate for the acquisition of Cuba, which led to the infamous Ostend Manifesto of 1854. This document suggested that the United States should seize Cuba from Spain, by force if necessary, to prevent the spread of slavery. The manifesto was widely criticized, particularly in the North, as an attempt to expand slavery into new territories. Additionally, Pierce's administration sought to expand trade and diplomatic ties with Asia, notably signing the Treaty of Kanagawa with Japan in 1854, which opened Japanese ports to American trade. Internal affairs. Domestically, Pierce faced numerous challenges in unifying a country increasingly divided over the issue of slavery. The Dred Scott decision of 1857, which occurred just after Pierce left office, further polarized the nation by ruling that African Americans could not be considered citizens and that Congress had no authority to prohibit slavery in the territories. This decision was consistent with Pierce's pro-Southern stance, but was widely condemned in the North. Pierce's presidency was widely regarded as ineffective, and by the time he left office in 1857, he was unpopular. His inability to address the growing sectional divide over slavery and his support for the Kansas-Nebraska Act contributed to his lack of legacy in the eyes of history. He did not seek re-election in 1856, and his party instead nominated James Buchanan, who would win the presidency in the midst of the secession crisis. After leaving the White House, Pierce retired to New Hampshire. He became increasingly disillusioned with politics and spent the remainder of his life in relative obscurity. He declined to support the Union during the Civil War, as his pro-Southern sympathies led him to condemn Northern actions during the conflict. Pierce's health deteriorated, and he passed away on October 8, 1869, at the age of 64. Franklin Pierce's presidency is often ranked poorly by historians, largely due to his handling of the issue of slavery and his failure to prevent the disintegration of the Union. His support for the Kansas-Nebraska Act and his inability to effectively navigate the deepening sectional crisis marked his tenure with controversy. However, his early political career and military service were noteworthy, and his efforts to expand American influence abroad deserve acknowledgement. Ultimately, Pierce remains a figure whose presidency stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of appeasing sectional interests at the expense of national unity